All right, I'm here. I'm had a late start today because I'm also at the club here working, but I still figure I'll just get on here and chat anyway. And even if it's just to be listened to later when since it's being recorded. So episode 2, Block Rock. Still no guests because I'm still figuring out the time slot, and I may end up doing this later, like in the evening or something, from home. But for now, there's just so much going on in crypto, obviously, so much going on in the fiat legacy relic business space. But yeah, one bit of news that I thought was interesting that I wanted to just start with today was Solana. And I don't know if anyone knows about this, but Solana is being bought up in huge amounts on the institutional level, kind of like a reserve, another reserve, So that would indicate that there's much bigger plays moving forward with Solana. Now, there are a lot of things built on Solana that could also be affected by this, because if Solana grows and goes up in US dollar value, price, whatever, then many projects that are built on Solana could also appreciate or be correlated, rather. So it's a tough thing. I don't know exactly, but it's usually the case, And so I did see this news here, which is Galaxy Digital's purchase of Solana tokens. Now, Galaxy Digital, in case anyone doesn't know, that's Mike Novogratz's company, and he's a big crypto guy from the TradFi space for many years. So, why are they buying all this Solana is the question, right? And let's see if I can get in there and actually read that little news thing. Here we go. Galaxy Digital adds $530 million in Sol. So $500 million in Solana. Season narrative gains traction. Interesting. And of course, Solana's up. So that's something that we do know, which of course is interesting. Galaxy Digital received over 2.3 million SOL over the past day from wallets on Binance, Coinbase, and Bybit. Galaxy recently participated in a 1.65 million PIPE investment in Forward Industries, which is starting a Solana treasury strategy. Oh, yeah. And one of the other things that I heard about was that Solana can confirm millions of transactions. So somebody I was listening to earlier this morning from TradFi was saying that all the markets around the world could be confirmed using Solana. So could you imagine if Solana gets implemented into the TradFi space in that way? I can't even imagine what that would do for Solana. Galaxy Digital seemingly acquired $536 million in Solana within the last 24 hours, according to on-chain data. Arkham Intelligence data shows that Galaxy received more than $2.31 million in SOL across numerous transactions from wallets on Binance, Bybit, and Coinbase over the past day. The block has reached out to Galaxy to confirm the transaction. The transaction comes on the heels of Galaxy's major investment in a Solana treasury company, fueling the narrative of an approaching bull season for the cryptocurrency. So I don't know. That to me seems very bullish for Solana and the altcoin space Very bullish. Yeah, we'll see. That's really bullish. Pretty wild. Well, I'll say just I'm just going to chat a little bit today. I'm thinking. Oh, Sweating and Smiling says hello, everyone. Hello. I'm thinking that could be an unbelievable catalyst between the Tom Lee narrative with Ethereum, and then Solana with Mike Novogratz and Galaxy Digital. I don't know where else that's going to lead. Of course, there's so much going on all the time. It's impossible to keep up with everything in crypto. But if we have funds in there and we have portfolios and investments, and we need to pay attention to these narratives, because that's what drives the market sentiment at the last phase of the market, which is what we're in now, Q4 of the final phase. So I don't know where that's going, but I'm paying attention. I'll tell you that much. Because do I want more fiat? Well, it's not really a question of whether I want more fiat. It's a question of how can I get more Bitcoin? And one of those ways is by making gains in the altcoin space and then using that to purchase Bitcoin, or move into Bitcoin rather, or whatever. Because you're probably going to stabilize it first, let Bitcoin retrace a little bit, then go back in. At least that's how it's been every cycle so far. Is that going to be different this time? Like everybody's saying, could, but also every single time everybody says this time's different, and then it's the same. So I don't know. But I will say that we're going crazy here at Bitcoin Benz with all these different things happening. I mean, Ben and everyone have been in El Salvador solidifying the credit union, the world's first Bitcoin-backed credit union, which to me is just a no-brainer of coolness. And so that's really exciting. I'm hoping to participate in that somehow at some point as well. And I would love to be able to participate in anything that's Bitcoin-backed or crypto-backed that helps me preserve my existence outside of the legacy fiat space, because that's not really working. And, some days I get really kind of upset, pissed off about it, when I think about how much something might cost at this, that if yogurt's $8, when it was a lot less not that long ago. Or when coffee, thank God I still have some coffee here. Or when coffee costs double, people buying a 1 pound bag of their favorite ground coffee costing, $20, $30. It's pretty crazy. And I'm always trying to explain to my friends and my colleagues in the music industry that most of them really can't like gravitate to it or wrap their minds around it. And I get it, because, it's abstract at first. But I keep telling people that they have to stop thinking about everything in US dollars, this weird desperation of US dollars, and how it's like a life of scarcity, right? As opposed to abundance. And I get that, because I personally have spent most of my life living that way, just constantly, what if I can't pay my rent this month? Or how am I supposed to get ahead? Never did. None of that works. Oh, the harder I work, the better off I'm going to be, the further ahead I'll get. And it doesn't work that way either. And, people in the creative space, like, doing music or art, forget about it, because, you're already making barely any money in the fiat sense. So your only hope really is to get involved in crypto and get some of your hard-earned resources into Bitcoin, because that's the only asset that can do and preserve your wealth the way it's working, which is basically the best. The apex asset, so to speak, right? Now, you could put your money other places if you want, if you don't feel comfortable with that. I don't even care much about anything else anymore. Yeah, you have gold. Gold's been going up, and it'll probably be, because the market is so controlled and manipulated by the top of the pyramid. I'm sure gold will keep going up. But I'm thinking the magic is really in Bitcoin, that's the magic. So I'm also real fried every time I get on here to do this after the day here at the club, But yeah, I personally don't see many options. I don't see hope for much of anything. And there are all these crazy political narratives going on here in my country that are just, really just divisors, just engineered to divide us up, break us up. So how do we get to the level of abundance? And that is the only way to do that is by not living in scarcity or in that scarcity mindset. So we scrounge around for fiat dollars, then we spend them because they're designed to be spent. So the first thing we want to do whenever we have them is spend them. It's like the natural instinct. Saving them is useless because they're being debased. So if they're being debased constantly, that means that the asset market has to go up in value against that. And we know they're debasing the supply because they have to expand it in order for the system to work. So they're definitely going to print more. They're definitely going to cut rates, and that's going to skyrocket the price of assets. And of course, Bitcoin, being the apex asset, is going to benefit from that on unprecedented levels. And we're probably going to see the craziest Q4 last phase of this bull market, So, but getting back to what I was saying about, I try to talk to people about moving over into the crypto space. You got to really be disciplined, and what happens is I did it with a good friend of mine from high school, and I'll probably have him on here. I'm going to have to change his time, I think, because everybody's at work still when I start doing this, so I can't get them on to call in. But he remembers when I first mentioned Bitcoin, which was years ago, over 12 years ago, and he can't believe it that I mentioned it back then. And it took him a long time before he finally got into it, before he finally accepted the idea of, hey, maybe I should look into this and see what's going on. And so he, now it's funny because now he got into it, and I got him into it with the Fold card, which is a great way to get people in, because you can just use the app. You can buy Bitcoin in there. You can save it in there. You can even have your paycheck go right to Bitcoin, every week or every 2 weeks, depending on how you get paid. So that's huge. But he got so into it that now his entire value system is shifting and changing. And that's what happens when sound money comes into your life, or when you start getting involved with sound money, is that your entire value system changes. So instead of just thinking about how much fiat can I get, now he's thinking about, wait, what's more valuable, spending fiat on this thing that I think I want right now, or buying Bitcoin, which is appreciating? And now he's basically just buying Bitcoin. Doesn't matter if it's a small amount. You do whatever you can. Depends on your capital flow, your income, whatever. But you just, the point is, a percentage of whatever you are in the fiat legacy relic system, you go into Bitcoin. And I tell everybody too, the biggest mistake I ever made was selling any Bitcoin that I ever had. That's the biggest mistake I ever made in my crypto journey. And so his whole value system has changed. So that's kind of proof that value is programmed in the fiat system for us to basically have no value in things. And we see that the fiat system is stretched. You can buy anything in 12 payments with zero interest now, right? Or not even now, for a bunch of years already. So what does that tell you? That tells you that retail, because the valuation and the debasement of the currency is so strong, retail people can't afford a $1,200 guitar, let's say. And since this is block rock, I'll use music examples all the time. People can't afford a $1,200 guitar, so you go onto the Zounds website and you look, and it says, oh, you can just buy it with 12 payments interest free. So of course, who wouldn't do that? That's a no-brainer. But the thing is, the retailers have had to resort to that because that's the only way they can continue to sell. Because someone making $500 a week can't afford a $1,200 guitar and pay all their bills, right? But they can afford $50 a month or $100 a month or whatever it is. Even though that is probably stretching it too, because now you're adding to your overhead, right? So that's an interesting thing to think about and look at and observe, and then try to reframe it. What if the valuation was like Bitcoin? So if it was like Bitcoin, then you would reconsider what you purchase, because now you want to keep this sound money. You don't want to just spend it. Now I realize there's variables, and it depends on how much people have. Some people are sitting on a stockpile of huge amounts of capital, of Bitcoin even, right? So of course there's a psychological component to it. But I'm just talking on the average regular person. Most people I know are working a job and paying their bills, and that's about it. And I know a lot of people, and I meet people all around the world because I've been to almost every country on planet Earth, and I see the same thing pretty much everywhere. Doesn't matter what kind of government they have, what the regime is, what the history of the nation is. There are some countries where it seems a little bit more free and a little bit easier, with a little bit less regulation. Where the government doesn't stick their hands in entrepreneurship as much, or small businesses. Unlike here, where the biggest companies are protected by the government and by regulation. That regulations, by the way, that are too difficult for the small business or small person to go up against. I know I had a small business and it was really difficult. It gets expensive. But of course, if you're huge and you have the capital to deal with that, and you have the power, they're obviously the ones who are going to be able to succeed, right? But overall, in general, it's mostly the common people walking with their heads down every week, trying to get paid, trying to pay the bills. System is stretching. That is becoming a bigger rift of earning versus paying bills, right? And imagine if you're like 25. I mean, well, it's even worse for you, because you're starting out, as a grown up in a system that's so stretched already that it's $25 for lunch. So I hope you're making $200 a day minimum, if you're paying $25 for lunch, and lifestyle comes into play. So then you can't do as many things. You can't have as much fun. You can't, the debt-based slave system gets even worse. It becomes even more negative and takes a toll on you, Now, I'm not saying everything is the fault of the system, because that's not true. We have to navigate whatever system we're in here to do what we can, and try to make our lives better and make other people's lives better. And I think that when you begin to preserve your wealth, it starts to give you a certain power. You start to feel the sovereignty. You start to feel the power of being able to be a sovereign being no matter where on earth you are living. And that's real empowerment. So all these musician colleagues that I know that are just so miserable all the time, and they're always asking, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Right. So obviously that's not going to get you anywhere. And the simple solution is to begin to learn and comprehend how the money system works, before you can even get to a book like this, the Book of Satoshi, which is one of my favorite books. I talk about this book in class here at the club often, and to members. I always share this book with members. And I've told many people what this book is, but in case you don't know, this book is a transcription from one of the first crypto forums, which was called bitcointalk.org. And it was very early on in the crypto space. And it was when all of us that were in the crypto space back then were seeking information, before there was crypto YouTube or anything like that. We were just chatting in the IRC back then. And that's stands for Internet Relay Chat, in case you don't remember what that is. But that's basically the beginning of the internet. But that relict app, that relict version of the internet, is what everyone in crypto was using to talk to each other. And so I was in there too. And we would be chatting about Vertcoin and all these things, Cryptsy, and exchanges that are so far in the history that even when I mention their names, they sound like, to me, like something that was in the 19th century at this point, even though it was only 10 years ago. But in crypto, of course, that's what it feels like, because everything's expanding and moving so fast. Is that because the universe is expanding and all these other things? Which, by the way, that makes me think about this concept called retrocausality, which is a physics theory from John Wheeler, the physicist who pretty much discovered the black hole, and at the very least coined the term black hole. And he worked with Albert Einstein. But he spent the majority of his life looking and observing at this concept, which is that the universe exists because it's being observed by us. And so he likens it to the shape of a U, which I find fascinating. So the universe begins somewhere, it goes in through time, then it starts to circle back on itself. So basically what he's saying is that since the dawn of time, of course, we don't know what that is, but since the dawn of time, the universe has been the origin of the universe has been radiating. So we've been receiving radiation from the origin of the universe, which means, in effect, the entire process is circular and it exists because of us. He calls it retrocausality. And it's been proven even in modern physics with experiments like the double slit experiment, which you can look up. Check out the double slit experiment. It's pretty fascinating. But this book is really fascinating because it's a transcription of, I don't know if every club has this book on hand, but it's easy to get. We try to keep a lot of these books here at the club in Nashville because we're big fans. But this book is a transcription of all of the correspondence in the early days, the beginning of the bitcointalk.org forum, in which the creators of Bitcoin were talking to each other to try to work it out, to try to figure out what was happening, To me, that's like unbelievable to think about, that it's in here now, and to think back in time with hindsight, the kinds of things that they were trying to figure out. Now, a lot of this is really technical, which is cool because it gets really, they were getting really deep into this. But for example, like look at this chapter 41 on a variety of transaction types, right? So it says here, I'll just read a little bit because this is interesting. This post is a bit more technical than other posts presented herein. However, I chose to include it because of its useful in explaining why Satoshi's first implementation of the core design supported a variety of possible transaction types so as to avoid future major modifications. I mean, think about everything that had to be thought out in order to create Bitcoin and to make it work, you know? And I don't know how many of you are keeping your Bitcoin, and or if you have it because you think you want to sell it for US dollars. You know, I'm always curious about that, and because there's a different comprehension of what is sound money. So it would say here regarding transactions and scripts, do hash 160 equal verify check sig, and then it goes into the actual posts that they were posted. We're talking about Satoshi Nakamoto, the Satoshi Nakamoto, who is or isn't a person or a group of people or computer scientists or whoever that was. This is them communicating with each other about how to make this work. Will it work? Is it even possible? What's possible? You know, and we're talking about a piece of technology that seemingly may be the most face melting, most history changing, most civilization transforming piece of technology of all time. That's what we're talking about here. On the purpose for which Bitcoin could be used first, and then proof of work, tokens, and spammers. I mean, like all these things were posted in this forum when they were trying to just figure out what is going on with Bitcoin. You know, like, is it going to work? Hal Finney, he's in here. He wrote, spam or batnets could burn through pay% email filters trivially. I mean, this is just a comment on the forum from Hal Finney, one of the pivotal important people. I believe he received one of the very first transactions, Bitcoin transactions. I mean, think about how monumental that really is, right? And I know a lot of people don't care about this stuff because they don't even really know what crypto is, even though we're all in this crypto community. But I myself am very into the ethos, the entire thing, because I actually believe in it. Otherwise, I wouldn't even still be here. And so, you know, it's really just cool to like look through this book and think about that time. Here's November 14th, 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto, regarding Bitcoin P2P eCash paper. Hal Finney wrote, I think it is necessary that nodes keep a separate pending transaction list associated with each candidate chain. One might also ask, how many candidate chains must a given node keep track of at one time on average? Fortunately, it's only necessary to keep a pending transaction pool for the current best branch. When a new block arrives for the best branch, connect block removes the block's transactions from the pending transaction pool. If a different branch becomes longer, it calls disconnect block on the main branch down to the fork, returning the block transactions to the pending transaction pool, and calls connect block on the new branch, sopping back up any transactions that were in both branches. It's expected that reorgs like this would be rare and shallow. So it was an incredible amount of brain power that went into crypto. And the fact that I hear all the time people explaining crypto to people and they're wrong. They're just giving all this wrong information because it's just like little tidbits of things that they learn and then regurgitate, just like anything. That's, you know, that's not good because then people get the wrong idea. You know, that's why it's good to give a read of a book like this or listen to a book like this, even on an audiobook version. You know, if you want to be involved in crypto or you are involved in the crypto space, I think it's important that if you're sharing this information with people, that, you know, that it's the correct information, because otherwise you may end up getting someone turned away from crypto, you know, and that's the last thing. The way this works is that the more people that get involved, the better it is for everybody. That's the crazy part about the crypto space. Unlike the fiat system, which is converged at the top, so that's the only benefit is up there, and then it diminishes exponentially as you go down the pyramid. Crypto works in the other way because it's about the adoption of an entirely new system that can free us from the chains and shackles of that other system. But yeah, anyway, this book is really cool. I recommend it to everybody. I can't imagine too many of my musician friends would really listen to me and actually check it out. But I do have one who lives in New Zealand, very good friend of mine, great piano player. We met studying jazz in Amsterdam, actually, because I lived in Amsterdam for a year and studied music there. And I met my pal Ben there, who's the coolest dude and an amazing piano player. And the funny thing is as soon as he started asking me about Bitcoin and he started getting interested and I started getting him involved in it, he found this book, the Book of Satoshi, and I didn't even tell him about it. And he told me about it, which that's the coolest thing. He was like, hey man, I'm checking out this book, the Book of Satoshi. And I was like, dude, that is so unbelievably cool. So you see, it just depends on where people get inspired or where people's minds go, You get inspired to find a book like that, then, well, that's cool. Then that's the deal. Anyway, today I'm just going to probably just wrap it there. I'll just keep this going. I'm going to have to move this time around, I guess. I don't even think this time is really that great. But I think I'm going to have to do it later just so I can have people call in. And that may be from my place, or maybe I don't live too far away from here, so I could always come back here and do the show. And, I have no idea if what I'm talking about is interesting to anybody, but I'm just going to keep doing it anyway because it's all generating energy generation into the crypto space and the consciousness, and we're all connected in there, whether we've been programmed to think that through the science and materialism matrix that we're not or not. The reality is we are. And Bitcoin and crypto is all part of that, to me at least. And I'm just going to keep chatting about it on here as per Ben's request anyway. So I'm just going to do it. But I do have to find a right time. If anybody's got suggestions too for a time, because I can't do it during operation hours here at the club because I'm just too busy here. But after hours, sometime in the evening, I think is probably going to be best. Or maybe like a Monday or something, or Sunday even. I don't know. All right, that's all I got for now. Price of Bitcoin's up to like 116, I think. Might see 120 soon. Something to think about. And yeah, good luck with all of your endeavors, and I hope everybody is just doing fabulous. And that's all I got for now.